Hi, I'm Erin Lindsay King. Welcome to Alaska Filmmakers, a program dedicated to exploring the many talented individuals working in the Alaska film industry. Every filmmaker has a story to tell, and most of them begin at an early age, inspired in some way by the world and the people around them, taking their methods of creativity to a whole new level. Today, we'll be talking with one of Alaska's creative influences within the Anchorage School District. Alaska Filmmakers is pleased to welcome the head of the radio and television production course at Anchorage's King Career Center, Dan Sparkman. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Now, before we get into the course that you teach at the King Career Center, and before we talk about the school and their approach to education, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you began as a filmmaker at a very young age. Kind of walk us into your journey through filmmaking.
How I began in filmmaking is a little interesting to a lot of people, and I tell my students a story because I'm almost 63 now. And I've been involved in this, as I look back, a long time, because when I was 16, I took a acting class in high school. And at that time, I was very, very shy, introverted individual, and that class just kind of made me understand that I could be an entertainer and I could do these different things. My father, coming back from the Depression and the old school, always thought of that as kind of silly. And so one day I remember coming to him, and we had a little 8mm camera. And I said, Dad, I'm going to go make a Western movie. And he looked at me like I had just arrived from Mars or something. He said, why? And I said, because I think it'd be fun to do. And so what I did is, this is in Oklahoma, and so what I did is I went out and at that time you could find this. I found a wagon and I found a buggy that I bought and painted and fixed up, and I took it to my aunt and uncles who had horses. And over the next 3 summers, we made Western movies. And it was interesting because by the time the first movie was halfway shot, my father was just, had his, he was very much involved. He was running the camera. He just couldn't believe how much fun that was. And of course, all my relatives did. But the point of the story is that since I was 16, I've been involved in some way in that, in media. To me, it was the beginning of a long journey, and I've had a lot of fun on that way.
Mm-hmm. So at a very young age, you were watching movies, and you always kind of had a fascination with them growing up.
I've always enjoyed movies because it was a sense of values that I thought, which was good and bad, and it was action and all the things that young children, even today, enjoy. I just think today we've changed the venue from a Western to Star Wars, which are basically Western movies, and Avatar, which is a Western theme type of thing. Yeah. So yeah, it fit what I was interested in very much.
And walk us through your high school experience. You said you did a little bit of acting in high school.
You know, I don't remember exactly why I took acting class. All I remember is I just felt that I had the ability to entertain, and I never felt that before. Mm-hmm. And so it made me feel like that I had something to offer. And so, and I think that's why I try to inspire children, kids today, is that we all have something to offer, and it's just finding out what that is. And because I was very, very fortunate to get into something at that age that inspired me and develop a passion about it, and the passion is still there.
Tell us a little bit about college. What did you study in college?
As going to college is a little interesting because Vietnam War was raging at that time. And I had a number that was very, very close to being called up. Back then it was a draft situation. But if you went to college, you could stay out of the draft. And a lot of my friends were going off to Vietnam and not coming back. And so I decided, I think I want to go to college, because I didn't know at that time even where Vietnam was. So I started to go to school and at the university, and I started majoring in history, which I enjoyed a great deal, thinking I wanted to be a history teacher. And my sophomore year, one of my professors said to me, Dan, what are you going to do when you get out of college? I said, well, I want to be a history teacher. Of course, my perception was you go to school and major in the thing you enjoy doing and you get a job at it. And he said, well, have you looked to see if there's any jobs as a history teacher? And I said, I don't even think about that. And he said, well, you need to think about it. So I went over to the placement office and looked on the board for history teachers, and there wasn't one. There was coaches / history, there was PE instructors, there was nothing. So I looked, and I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I looked at the board and I said, ma'am, and I talked to the placement, I said, show me where the most demand is. What job is out there that you can't find enough of? And she took me over to a speech pathologist. And I didn't even know what a speech pathologist was, but I knew there was jobs all over the place. So I walked right over to that department and said, I'd like to sign up to become a speech pathologist.
Not knowing what it was.
Not knowing what it was, but I found out that as a speech pathologist, it's very, very close to working in theatrics, working in the theater. There's a lot of people that go into speech pathology and they have a background in theater, because you develop your voice, you develop the skills of putting on a persona, because you have to, working with a lot of people that are disabled. So consequently, I went into that and I enjoyed that immensely, and did that for about 20 some years as a speech pathologist.
And how did you come to Alaska?
I came to Alaska. I had gone to Nevada and had gone back to get my master's degree in Oklahoma. And I was teaching at a university down there. And I'd been there for about 3 years and realized that university teaching was more about people that had retired from anything else and would go into teaching university. It was basically for people that had had a career. And I had 2 young daughters, and the money wasn't there. It just wasn't there. So I looked around again for where the opportunities were and the money was, and Alaska was it. So I came up and interviewed and was hired up here.
So let's talk about the King Career Center now. Tell us generally what their approach to education is.
The King Career Center is an alternative high school setting for students that want to develop skill training. So these are students that can go there from their half day at their high school and come to our school for vocational training. In Alaska, there are a number of areas where there is a great demand for skilled workers, and not necessarily just all the work, all the jobs are for university, degreed people. So we have radio and TV production there, and that's been there for a long time. I started about 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so my job, just like everyone else, is to provide these students with an opportunity to work in radio and TV production, and they can earn English credit. A lot of our classes, you can earn academic credit.
So tell us some of the details about your curriculum. We know it's radio and television, but one thing that you mentioned is that you're kind of moving it towards the arena of movie making. Let's talk about that a little bit.
It's interesting because when I first started in the class, I was teaching the class, of course the curriculum was already set there, and it's an English credit. Mm-hmm. So my principal at the time, I said, well, what's most important? I do the radio or TV or the English? And he said the English. So it was always about the English credit, mm-hmm. reading, writing. And so that's always been the driver for it. So early on, I remember I had a student, and I think he's going to be on your show one day. His name's Levi Taylor. Okay. He's a filmmaker. And Levi came through my class, and you could just see, and you see this many, many times with young people that walk through my class or walk through the door, and you can just see the lights there, the passions there. They want to be a filmmaker. And you say, okay, wait a minute, this is radio TV production. It is not the film class that you think it is. And so consequently, when Levi showed up one day, he said, I want to be a filmmaker, blah, blah. Okay, I said, but you've got to understand, we have these other things we have to do. Because it appears more and more students have that passion, that interest, then it's driven me to go to my principal and to people and say, listen, we really need to reevaluate and look at the filmmaking part of this, what this class could be. Example, radio is not the driving force that it used to be. So that's given me pause to try to develop a new curriculum where we will be approaching filmmaking as another option in that class, more so than what I make it now. But now it's more than it was 10 or 15 years ago, because it's gradually evolved. So it's always about, all of our classes at King Career Center, and mine in particular, it's about trying to fill the need for the real world.
Right.
And so when the real world changes, then schools need to understand they have to change their curriculum to meet the needs for a population or the jobs that are out there.
And particularly in film, it's recognizing this transition in technology, and also specific to Alaska, I'm sure as well, you probably have a lot of young students that are excited about the films coming up here. And do you have more students that you used to have now that
Oh, yeah.
a lot more films are coming up? People are more interested in it?
Oh yeah, it used to be that kids that I have first semester and second semester students. Second semester students are coming back, so basically they can major in something.
Okay.
So I have 5 students, example, in the morning I have 5 young men, and every one of them wants to be a filmmaker. Years ago, that would be out of 5, maybe 2 want to go into radio, 2 want to go into television, and maybe 1 wants to be doing, go into film work. But now you see more of it, and I'm not for sure it's because they hear about it locally, filmmaking, or it's just the opportunities are out there. And I explained to my students, I said, I don't think we've ever seen a time in history when a filmmaker or someone that wants to develop their skills in filmmaking that has such an opportunity. When I was a kid, when I was their age, if you want to be a filmmaker, it was almost impossible. You'd have to go to Hollywood and go through a whole litany of things that you want to do, and to make your own film would be almost impossible. So the opportunities there, and I think that's what's driving a lot of these kids. I get a lot of skateboarder kids because they skateboard and they see the videos, and consequently they want to be filmmakers.
So the course is for grades 9 through 12, is that right?
Actually, my day class, radio TV, is for 11th and 12th graders, juniors and seniors.
Okay.
But we have programs like a third session, which is in the afternoon, that runs from 3 o'clock to 5:30 that 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders can take.
Okay.
Those classes are what I consider are introduction courses. So a 9th grader can come to my class in the afternoon, keep them off the street, keep them involved in some sort of after-school activity, and when they come to class, if they say, Mr. Sparkman, we'd like to maybe make a movie or learn how to make movies, then I allow them to do that, because that is an introduction course. There's no academics involved, so therefore there's no real sense that I have a curriculum we've got to meet and we've got to attain. But Erin, what I'm seeing more and more of is students in middle school, because our middle schools in the school district are now very much involved with the decrease in cost of both cameras and software. We're seeing classes now where kids are making movies in their English literature class, and then even in middle school we have kids learning about Final Cut Pro. This is almost unheard of 10 years ago. The more that kids understand about this, then the more it inspires people. And I think that's what we need is, we need passion, but we need kids to be inspired to have a goal.
Are there any prerequisites for this course, and how do students go about, do they apply for the course? Do they just come talk to you about it?
The prerequisites for the day class are basically juniors and seniors. Okay. And they have to basically, they can talk to the counselor. They can actually go on to a Zango program we have now and enroll in the class. So there's no real prerequisites at all.
And I know you're a storyteller yourself, you are a big writer. How do you inspire maybe those students that don't have that passion for story writing? How do you bring out the best in your students in that aspect?
You know, it is hard. It is hard because you've got to not only present information, but you've got to put them in a position. And what I find is peer pressure is the greatest, motivator. So you put young people in a position of where they have to be in charge. They have to, and after they've learned some of these things, whether it's directing or producing or camera work, and after they learn it, they go, wow, and that was kind of neat. But you had to not necessarily force them, but you say, well, this is part of the class. You have to participate in all that. So I think the biggest thing is the hands-on. You can talk about it all day long, but when you have to shoot a commercial or music video, you're going to go do it, and then everybody comes back and looks at the finished product and is very excited and laughing about it and said, that was a lot of fun. When can we do another one? So after a while, I mean, it becomes second nature to them, and they start to take a pride in it.
Well, and it must be a nice break for some of these students too. It's not the routine that you have in a lot of other classes where you're writing papers, you're taking exams, and perhaps you have a lot of things like that too, but I would imagine it would be really exciting for them to see their first commercial or music video, like you said. That must be really exciting.
But again, my class is hands-on, and all of our classes at King Career Center are what we consider hands-on learning. You still have an academic component, you still have some reading and writing, but it's hands-on. So as soon as they arrive, it's hands-on. We do TV shows every morning, and so when they first arrive, they have to set it up for the show, and they go from there to commercials and all that. Once a week, I lecture. But it's so radically different from a regular class where they come and sit down at a desk and listen to the instructor talk. So here it's driven by the process, and the process is production.
Well, and that's the production aspect of it is another thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about too, about what you kind of touched on before was time management, deadlines, learning how to work with people. Do you have a lot of students that come in not really thinking about those aspects of it? Do you find that you really have to ingrain a certain amount of discipline in a lot of your students?
I find, and I can appreciate this because I'm a creative person, I have time management problems too. And I find that most creative people, and I fall into that, have time problems. They have problems, and when is this due? How does this work? And so I come to the table, and I say, guys, I got the same problem you do. And I've learned to work with it, and I learned that, this is things that have to happen.
Like you mentioned already, you have students that have all different sorts of interests. As far as the projects that they're doing in the class, are they allowed to hone in on movies or radio or television? Or are the students given the same assignments?
They have two groups, first and second semester. First semester are brand new, and the first 9 weeks is about covering the English credit. They have TV shows to do, they have radio shows, they have commercials to film. After the 9 weeks, then I say, okay, we're going to take away some of this reading and writing, and now we're going to work some on filmmaking. So I give them short scripts, and some movies I've written, and so I give them movies where it's, either funny or it's action-packed, and give those to them after 9 weeks for them to develop. That's first semester. So they learn a little bit about that, and they learn about the editing process, but enough to just, I'm trying to get them excited about that, because then those are the ones that get excited about it. Say, I'd like to come back next semester. And I said, well, if you come back next semester, you can major. And what that means is you do not get English credit, but you get 1.5 elective credits, but you can work on whatever you want to work on. So I have some come back and say, Mr. Sparkman, all I want to do is work on Final Cut Pro. I want to learn how to edit. Some come back and say, I'd like to shoot movies and put them in film festivals. Some say, I want to work on my acting skills because I want to be an actor. So I provide them just a vehicle, those kids that are coming back with a vehicle to do the things they want to pursue.
You mentioned before something about on-the-job training that the King Career Center offers for your students.
On-the-job training is for all of our students, and it gives them a real-world experience. So again, if you have a A or B in a class, whether it's mine or welding, it doesn't make any difference. If they have the experience, if they have an A or B and their attendance has been good, no absences of any, only 4 absences, and tardies and all that, then what we do is we have jobs where we can place them at a job. It's not a paid position, but they can go out and get experience. And I've been very fortunate to work with Channel 2, Channel 13, Channel 11 for television, and a number of the radio stations.
How important do you think it is to seek out a formal education in filmmaking?
Anybody can make a movie. Anybody can make a movie. Now, that doesn't mean it's a good movie, but anybody can make a movie. I think there's a lot to be said for going to school to learn about a lot of things, you know, the history and learn, but also that you have to follow certain procedures and all that and in filmmaking. But I also know kids that didn't go to school that are making pretty good movies. And I know in the industry there are people that never went to film school. I think if you can afford it and you have the opportunity, but I also think that it's not for everyone. And I don't want somebody not to be a filmmaker because they weren't like me that didn't have the opportunity to go to college. The good things that I see right now in the state is that it appears that Fairbanks is really, University in Fairbanks is really developing their film program up there, and I like to see that because I think in-state filmmaking or classes is really important, because I think sometimes kids that have this passion are taken advantage of, especially by a lot of these tech schools where they have these gigantic tuitions, and then they have loan programs and kids get caught up in this.
One last thought. You have a story about a kangaroo suit, boxing kangaroo suit. You were an extra in a film.
Years ago when I lived in Nevada, I was a speech pathologist in Nevada, and they were making a movie in Nevada. Ironically, it was supposedly set in Oklahoma, which was kind of interesting. But so I went over and I signed up and got a little check. I think it was $40 for being on set as an extra. And we had to set in this big arena, and there was a boxing mat in this thing, and the story was about a kangaroo. This guy had found a kangaroo that was a boxer. I'm sitting out in the audience with a lot of other people, and it was a story. Robert Mitchum was even in. I got to meet Robert Mitchum, but anyway, so I'm watching this scene, and I'm going, God, that looks like a man in a kangaroo suit. I mean, I just don't see how it looks anything different. So during the break, I walked up and talked to somebody on set, you know, that was working on the movie, one of the officials. I said, "Sir, I have a question for you. How is this going to look like a real kangaroo? It looks like a comical thing, you know." And he goes, "Oh, no. You should see what they do in Hollywood. They can make this look so real you wouldn't believe it." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "But boy, right now it looks pretty stupid." And of course, this is before digital effects and all that jazz. And he said, "Oh no, you'll be surprised, and you'll be surprised." So I remember when the movie came out, we were watching it in the theater, and everybody turned their way and said, "Hey, look, that's a man in a kangaroo outfit." And I thought to myself, and as I watched them make the movie, I said, you know, there's not a dime's worth of difference between what they're doing and what I did when I was 16 years old. It's just they had a budget. They had a big budget, big stars. But as far as the story, but as far as the process, there was not a difference. And in fact, I think mine was probably more entertaining than this one. But at the same time, I learned right then that just because it's a Hollywood production doesn't mean a lot unless it's got a good story. And that's why I started working on writing, because I said it's all driven by stories. It's all driven by the storytelling deal. So much of it is plugging in the technology, plugging in the idea of how to shoot and all that after you've learned those skills. But it goes back to the storytelling, and that's when I realized, you know, just because it's a movie in Hollywood doesn't mean it's a good movie. It just means it's a movie in Hollywood.
Great. Well, thanks for talking with us today, and good luck to you and all of your students.
Well, thank you again for inviting me on the show. And again, any students that are out there that are interested in this program, in my program, please talk to your counselor at your home high school, and love to see you in my class.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Alaska Filmmakers. We'd like to thank our host, Out North Theater, and Dan Sparkman for taking the time to speak with us today. If you would like more information about the King Career Center and the radio and television course, please visit our website at www.alaskafilmmakers.com. Thank you for joining us, and remember, everyone has a story to tell.